Everybody, good to meet you again. Let's start off when I got out here in 2002. Could have been 2001 though. And within a year of coming out here, I wanted to take that expertise and continue on with a successful career. So I'm going to show there's a lapse of, it's actually 2002 and 2003. It doesn't show anything for career. Even though I was pursuing in 2003. And I took about a year off down here. And so anyhow, now I have to admit, I did get some inheritance, but that career is so vitally important to somebody's life. It's absolutely essential. I came out here unfamiliar with the area of knowing nothing more than there was 4 million population. Without any question, with that type of experience, look, I'm able to fully validate that with the College Lake County. I think it was May of 2012. The education completely irrelevant. That experience, you're a business professional, puts you way ahead of most people, without any question. And so I wanted to utilize that expertise exactly for what it was for. I knew exactly what I was seeking. I was seeking a PhD in vocational psychology. I just didn't know how to describe it. I mean, you put it on, a traditional application, and of course, I fill out tons of application. Then I was able to gain that experience, for about 8-9 years. In any event, what it comes out to be is I got a helping hand from the United Way, a local community service, and it would have been equivalent to the College Lake County boom. And I was referred on, and I had a meeting with Alan Merkelis. And I have to honestly say, my contacts. Anyhow, thanks. I met with an individual, and I was just making what you already know. General inquiry, boom. And right then it would have been, in fact, I had it with me. I have this, I was able to dig this up. Let me just show you this real quick. I have, only about 0.25% of these original records. But clearly, I mean, everything's here. Everything. I mean, I'm able to prove it. I'm used to the highest level of honesty and integrity. See? Now, I don't have all of the records, but I still retain just enough to be able to fully substantiate it. I was able to expand in other markets in the second half of 1986 through 2001. But this is what I mentioned, around 8 years. And what would fit in here. Take how many of those you can put in there, a couple of thousand. Of all of that directly, 50% of that in Lake Forest and the rest up and down. But I expanded out later. Okay? And I didn't keep everything. I did keep some. And I have it labeled as 1986 through 2001, as far as my resume records. Invaluable. I wish I kept thousands directly related to the town. Very unique and very fortunate on her. But I met with Alan Merkelis in 2004. I made the most general inquiry right then. Boom. Professional career comes with PhD in vocational psychology. Just exactly what I've described over and over again on 1986. I've done that with so many people. It's very valuable experience. But keep it within proportion. Put me back up on the Skullland North Shore. Same setting as of today or the future. Just like that. Most solid business practices, the communication skills that literally I'm able to create long-term success. It sets apart from the competition, all of that. And I met with Alan Merkelis, and that's exactly what I was going for. And when I mentioned entrepreneur, I had those records in my hand. And all of a sudden, he creates a disorder. As soon as I mentioned entrepreneur, I'm sorry I didn't say I was introducing myself. And he gets real hot. And you know what he said? I don't give a even. And then He got me into an evaluation. I agreed to it. And he exited the room real quick, like I would go after him. And the expression on his face, had to have filmed that. He had to have. To show a disorder on me of major behavioral issues. And that's exactly what continued on in psychiatric, like I'm an invalid who is just a mess. It's medically documented. I called him back a month later, and clearly, he said brain damage. And I believe with this evaluation I have, it basically shows it. Now this goes all the way back to 2004, and I don't have a lot of those medical records, but just the evaluation itself is plenty. There's absolutely no you take what's been true for over 40 years of my life, and I have to say, very clearly, I'm very straight to the point in without any question. And, you know, when I look at this evaluation here, it almost makes me look like that deafness is psychiatric. Clearly. I mean, this is someone who is serious issues. When you look at this evaluation here, the resemblance, what's been true for over 40 years, and being able to call back College Lake County just a couple of months ago, this makes me look like serious stuff. But all medical, PhDs, I found this to be so unprofessional. And clearly, I mean, just psychiatric, I mean, impossible without falsifying medical records. No, this was not a misunderstanding. He told me a month later, brain damage. And by the time it was all said and done, I'd been there for 4 days. It even shows where basically, you know, when they assumed and gossiped, assumed between themselves. Just unbelievably unprofessional. Not one single person related. Not one. 100% negligence. And it all was said and done that I met with Alan Merklis and Michael Quinn. Now, let me mention before that, after I fully cooperated in being put in a room like I had a stroke, flashcards, like someone really did have brain damage. That's basically what they documented here. And physiological. And most important. Yeah. Impossible. If you were to meet with me, impossible. And you can see why my reaction was that way in the early videos. Okay, this is all medical, completely irrelevant substance. It has nothing to do with a PhD in vocational psych. Unheard of. All I was seeking was the highest level of expertise. I wasn't seeking education. And it shows that the program director of the center, that I called her on the 4th day and I tried to say, hey, I'm seeking a PhD in vocational psychology and in Lake Forest and up and down the Chicago. And she said, impossible for us to make a mistake. In fact, I'm completely out of touch with reality. I don't even know why I'm there. Is what this shows. Is what this shows. It shows someone that by the time it was all said and done, just major. You see, right here. Look at this. Clearly. See, it's from contracts to psychiatric. It's absolutely impossible without falsifying medical records. I wouldn't even think of that at this time. I was basing it on the past 40 years of my life, where I've only experienced that. So I cooperated. I needed that PhD in vocational psychology, and it was just endless. By the time it was said and done, I might get a job at a health food store as a clerk. Here's these 3, master's degrees. And then oh, very important. When I met with Alan Markowitz, let me just continue on here, finish this off, as George Gregory, Program Coordinator. Okay? That's the woman I called on the 4th day who said, hey, I'm seeking a PhD in vocational psychology, that's it. And tried to tell her about Lake Forest and that experience, and she documented that I'm completely out of touch with reality on this. I didn't even know I was being tested. Basically, yes, completely transformed to medical, and really something that's very unprofessional. It's almost falsifying medical records. And I believe in the setting I was put in, like, I didn't know I was there. More than anything, that not once a complete 100% negligence. All of this was a waste of money. I don't know how much it's cost them, but by the time it was said and done, I met with Alan Markowitz, who said, I got such a case built up of you. Obviously, those actions directly coincide. I've got such a case against you, you'll never get services. Well, they're at the same thing with taking your medication as of today. It's psychological malpractice is what they're committing. I contacted Jim Carden right off the bat. Everything is mental illness. Psychiatrist states there is none on me. Rachel Hughes comes up and looks right at that neuropsychologist. It says that my hearing loss is physiological in nature, is psychological in nature, not physiological. Use stasium to possibly Meniere's disease. Hereditary. My mama had the same thing. And was all said and done, they sick a Stephen K. Simpson, a real powerhouse, that I was just looking at the career experience I had and seeking a PhD in vocational psychology, the highest level of expertise. I needed that. That was it. That was it. Nothing else. These falsified medical records, I do not have the physical copy that Pam Mobley has, a human studies professor, but and basically, all said and done, psychiatrist, no mental illness. None. Regarding how much conflicting information I received there, that shows my stability. Okay? And we went through all of this, it's just completely disqualifying. Falsifying medical records. I may never prove they've been falsified. They've been tampered with so many times by someone who has authority of a human studies professor and God knows whatever else. Jim Harris III, that attorney of his, Stephen K. Simpson, real powerhouse. I am definitely that way. I am an invalid that's just teetering, on the verge of in and out of reality. And when I really pushed it, and this is something was not a disorder. I paid a fortune in my lifetime. From the highest level of expertise, I'm seeking the most reasonable possible request. I had to agree to a human studies professor, powerhouse, Stephen K. Simpson, and Jim Harris III. Okay? I may have contacted the U.S. Department of Labor, Education, and Justice regarding to the civil servants that I'm experiencing now quite a bit different. I had to, human studies professors, so we're completely unrelated. There's no reason for any of that. As soon as I touched upon entrepreneur again, powerhouse of Stephen K. Simpson, all of that's related to this, every bit of it. It's outright psychological malpractice. I was never seeking education. Never. That's not what my goal was. It was a PhD in vocational psychology. Just touched upon entrepreneur. I would have paid for a community college. There's no reason for this. or even up to a bachelor's. That is not what I was seeking. None of it. Absolutely none. But it was the human studies professor or Stephen K. Simpson. I should have said as an entrepreneur. This went on through 2007. From that date forward, I was in touch with Jim Harris III 3 times a year, who's just, everything's mental illness, but I'm not mentally ill. That's psychological malpractice. The statute of limitation is to be reset as of February of this year. I'm positive I can prove psychological malpractice. If you knew what was true about my 40 years, this is a complete transformation to an invalid at the highest level of expertise, federal, to achieve your maximum potential. It is so incredibly corrupted, it's riddled with medical corruption, every single bit of that. You look at what's true about my background, what they documented it's falsified medical records. If you knew what was true about my 40-year history, and then a transformation of an incorporated norm down here, no resemblance. They had to give in. But I wasn't seeking the education. I was just simply seeking a full disclosure of the U.S. Department of Labor, Education, and Justice. I was really seeking the highest level of expertise from people who were, professionals, PhD in vocational psychology. That was it. The cost would have been nothing, minimal. Not a human studies professor. It was related to really a very simple request. I would have picked right back up again, and I should have, right back up to Lake County, but I stayed down here. This went on through 2007. When I met with her, I probably documented it. All of this is unrelated. When this went on for 3 years, I did not commit a disorder. It may have, but completely relative to the substance. Exactly in context to the basis. I never did commit a disorder. They created a situation to finally get a response. I don't want to listen, I would never harm anyone. But my reaction certainly was very proportional. I said, hey, how about that P instead of that, get out of here. I blew $75,000 on this. I mean, really, you push someone for 3-4 years with a high-powered attorney in completely irrelevant substance. I was forced. It all happened just because I mentioned entrepreneur. I get this powerhouse of Stephen K. Simpson, and no matter how much I tried to communicate, they absolutely would not allow me to. I think a PhD in vocational psychology is about as reasonable as it gets. That's psychological malpractice. To have Jim Harris III have the authority of turning this all into disorders, you cannot change those first 40 years. It's impossible. Well, 35. And yet, out here, I'm transformed to an invalid. Pretty much out of touch with reality. And they continued on with a human studies professor, and when I learned it was emotional intelligence and went back, now I'm an infantile. Again, a human studies professor. You talk about absolutely spectacular corruption. I never was going for anything more than just a full disclosure in the healthiest context. That negligence is 100%. 100%. But it's the ongoing of what really is psychological malpractice. When you look at this evaluation. There is absolutely no resemblance. It's impossible for me to be a person as what they're describing here. It's fully documented by PhDs and everything. I would say with this, I could just imagine what those medical records show. It's that thick. It shows me with MRIs with brain damage. I may never be able to prove that, but the psychological, I would say yes. Yes. I never did commit any disorder. I have no history of that. And welcome to Birmingham. Medical corruption, falsifying medical records. Yeah, I would say with what you see here describing me as compared to Lake Forest, it basically shows falsified medical records. I may never be able to prove it, but I'd say the psychological malpractice, pretty evident. What followed? 3 times a year I'm in touch with this guy, and I'm clearly saying, this went on for the following 3 years. God only knows how many thousands they invested in that, in the medical. And then the MRIs again in 2009, when I was simply EQ related for a PhD in vocational psychology instead of infantile. I'm infantile. And that went on for an additional 3 years with Jim Harris III. That is a high level. He has that powerhouse of Stephen K. Simpson. That's right up by the governor of the state. You're talking about someone who has authority in medical, particularly the psychological aspect, which he has no business. It's all performance related. A PhD in vocational psychology is such a reasonable request. That's all I was seeking. I finally came across it was actually EQ, emotional intelligence. I couldn't get it. That's exactly what they're doing. Bill Pryor, all those laws, the highest level of substance. I've got President Bush, previous Attorney General of the state, Mr. Simpson clearly said, there's no one who's going to get around this. Oh, yeah? You can't change that 40 years, I can fully substantiate. I'm going to label this 2004 through 2007, number 2, which is right there in 2004. Instead of the helping hand of the United Way, leading you into a system that I've never experienced that in Lake County. Clearly, you would never be led into the medical corruption, let alone all of it. It's completely irrelated substance. The negligence is absolutely incredible with ulterior motives that makes everything medical aimlessly just in a daze and haze going to completely irrelated substance that always comes to medical when none of it's medical, but all of it is. Welcome to Birmingham. I've heard about things like this before. I had to go through the experience, the whole experience, as what's going to follow. I'm willing to go public on this for sure. Thank you. 2004 through 2007, number 2. I did not understand a transformation. I only knew the incorporated norm of the past 40 years. I'm ready to share now a continuation of my career in 2008, number 2, up to where I am presently. Thank you for getting to know me. These records I'm going to make sure I've retained. You might as well say falsified medical records. I'll never prove it, but certainly that description of what they make me appear like, those other true physiological, but you got a human studies professor though. See? Jim Harris III and that attorney. They have been tampered with and modified so many times by Jim Harris III and that human studies professor. There are no medical records. God knows what. I just know there's absolutely no resemblance in any manner that describes what's true about over 40 years of my life. I've never experienced anything like this ever in Lake County. There's no truth to any of it. It is medical, though, but none of it is. Thank you. Thank you for letting me share that, and I'm going to now continue on with 2008 forward. Number 2.